Yahoo News reported on a CIA plot, right, which they were discussing, which involved assassinating and or kidnapping Julian Assange. Now, I hate to say this because it kind of indicates how dire the situation is, but we're not surprised. We already knew this, right? We knew from the UC Global employees or former employees who are testifying in Spain in the court case that is unfolding over there. When I was in court at the Old Bailey, on one of the days we had their testimony. So we don't know their identities. It's been kept anonymous, but you have a few former employees of this Spanish company, UC Global, who discussed this. And now we have confirmation from other US officials. Dozens, in fact. So this is the story I'm talking about. It was published on September 26th in Yahoo News. It's titled Kidnapping, Assassination, and a London Shootout Inside the CIA's Secret War Plans Against WikiLeaks. Now, I must warn you, it's a very long read. Very interesting read, but a very long read. So you must take the time to sit down and go through it on your own peacefully. But I will cover some of the main points in this fine piece of journalism over here. And one of them, for example, is not just the targeting of Julian Assange himself, the founder of WikiLeaks, who's who's the target of a political witch hunt, but other people in WikiLeaks, right? So they talk about in this article how they targeted other people in WikiLeaks, right? And this involves breaking into their apartments, stealing their possessions, their documents, specifically copies of the Vault 7 leak. So maybe you recall Vault 7. These were published by WikiLeaks in 2017, and they involve all manners of, CIA documents regarding their tech capabilities, how many zero-day exploits they're hoarding, which enable them to access, to exploit security vulnerabilities on, mobile phones, operating systems. So the CIA, they have a team who find them and hoard them and then use them when necessary to, hack people's phones or devices. And then, of course, it's very interesting. You can see they're going and installing malware on other agencies. It's really, really exceptional. And so, I'm just going to read you a passage here from the article, right? While Assange had been on the radar of U.S. intelligence agencies for years, these plans for an all-out war against him were sparked by WikiLeaks' ongoing publication of extraordinarily sensitive CIA hacking tools known collectively as Vault 7, which the agency ultimately concluded represented the largest data loss in CIA history. President Trump's newly installed CIA director, Mike Pompeo, was seeking revenge on WikiLeaks and Assange, who had sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy since 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden on rape allegations he denied. Again, they're just throwing in the rape thing again, and I feel compelled to point this out because a lot of people still don't understand this. There were never any rape charges in Sweden. There were only allegations, and that's a whole other scandal in of itself, right? Character assassination, trying to smear Assange. But I'm just going to continue to the next sentence here, and they say, Pompeo and other top agency leaders were completely detached from reality because they were so embarrassed about Vault 7, said a former Trump national security official. They were seeing blood, right? And they say that the CIA's fury at WikiLeaks led Pompeo to publicly describe the group in 2017 as a quote-unquote non-state hostile intelligence service, right? And so this is a phrase, this is a term that they concocted, that they coined, that they came up with, that they invented for the sole purpose of targeting WikiLeaks and painting them as a malign actor, as an enemy, and so forth, right? And it's because of the Vault 7 things. But what's very interesting, just to underscore this point, you can see that they're not just going after Assange, they're going after the organization itself. That's the point here, right? And trying to paint it as something, otherly. And look, this is also very interesting. Pay attention. So, among the journalists some U.S. officials wanted to designate as quote-unquote information brokers were Glenn Greenwald, then a columnist for The Guardian, and Laura Poitras, a documentary filmmaker who had both been instrumental in publishing documents provided by Snowden, right? So these former officials are saying, is WikiLeaks a journalistic outlet? Are Laura and Glenn truly journalists? We tried to change the definition of them, and I preached this to the White House and got rejected. So this is in the Obama days, right? And they talk about how, there was sort of a split here where Obama didn't want to go too far and prosecute WikiLeaks because that would implicate the New York Times and so forth. But then Trump comes in and he's all for it. Now, I do want to point out something interesting that is also in this article. When they talk about kidnapping Assange or killing him, right? It's insane. Here they say, at meetings between senior Trump administration officials after WikiLeaks started publishing the Vault 7 materials, Pompeo began discussing kidnapping Assange, according to 4 former officials. While the notion of kidnapping Assange preceded Pompeo's arrival at Langley, the new director championed the proposals, according to former officials. This is a very interesting phrase. This is a very interesting sentence. So they're saying that Pompeo didn't come up with this, which is shocking enough. So they were discussing kidnapping him before Pompeo arrived. That's quite, it's a little vague, but it's also not that hard to imagine which officials we're talking about, right? Given the time frame in which Vault 7 was released and WikiLeaks activities and publications. So of course, they go into several different ideas that they had. One is leaving we talked about this. UC Global talked about this, how they had an idea of leaving the door open, maybe by accident, right? So letting the U.S. come in. And, this is absolutely hilarious, this line over here. Look at this. They say such actions were sure to create a diplomatic and political firestorm, as they would have involved violating the sanctity of the Ecuadorian embassy before kidnapping the citizen of a critical U.S. partner, Australia, in the capital of the United Kingdom, the United States' closest ally. Trying to seize Assange from an embassy in the British capital struck some as ridiculous, said the former intelligence official. This isn't Pakistan or Egypt. We're talking about London. Right? I like that little phrase, how, fuck everyone else. We can go and create havoc and kidnap people and assassinate people in those countries, but not here. This is a white country. We don't do that over here. That's really hilarious, right? Like, that's just incredible. So, in any case, this is a very long article, but it really confirms once again what we already knew from the UC Global employees. And in response to this article, look at what Mike Pompeo had to say, right? So he's on Glenn Beck's radio show. This is a video. I'm going to play it to you, okay?
I want to talk to you about redistricting, but I have to ask you a question on a story that broke yesterday from Michael Isikoff, so take it for what it's worth, that says that, the gist of the article, you were so obsessed with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that you and the president were looking at really aggressive methods, including kidnapping or an assassination. One scenario included a possible shootout with Russian agents who you believed were going to try to get Assange for themselves.
Glenn, I've seen the piece. I knew they were writing on this thing. I'd say 3 things. First of all, it's Isikoff. We've seen he was a big Russia hoax perpetrator.
Yep, he was.
Yeah, so take that for what it's worth. Second, there are many stories out there now about how the president and I were engaged in things that were crazy, right? There's this talk about that there was an effort to drop a nuclear weapon on China in the last week's administration. This story is of that same ilk, right? I couldn't tell you who they have as their sources, but those sources didn't know what we were doing. And then the third point, I guess, Glenn, is we were very worried about the fact that we had bad actors who were stealing really, really sensitive material from the United States. And I make no apologies for the fact that we and the administration were working diligently to make sure that we were able to protect this important sensitive information from whether it was cyber actors in Russia or the Chinese military or anyone who was trying to take this information away from us. Not just commercial stuff like intellectual property theft, but real national security secrets. And so we were working hard to go after those bad actors who were trying to do that.
So was Assange and WikiLeaks, are they journalists in a media outlet or a hostile intelligence entity?
So I came to believe that they were, in fact, one of the first non-state hostile intelligence entities. They weren't engaged in even crappy reporting like Isikoff does. They were engaged in active efforts to steal secrets themselves and pay others to do the same in a way that violated both the central understandings that I think the American people get, and second, violated U.S. law as well. We were always careful. I'm all about a big, bold, strong First Amendment, but these folks were acting in ways that were deeply inconsistent with that.
Well. That's not all Pompeo had to say. That's not all he had to say. I want to show you something else over here. Okay? So this appeared 4 days later after the initial story broke in Yahoo News. Again in Yahoo, they say, Pompeo, sources for Yahoo News WikiLeaks report should all be prosecuted. So, former CIA director and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Wednesday called for the criminal prosecution of sources who spoke to Yahoo News for a story detailing proposals by the intelligence agency in 2017 to abduct WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange and discussions within the Trump administration and CIA to possibly even assassinate him. Pompeo, appearing on Megyn Kelly's podcast, was asked to respond to the Yahoo News story, which was based on interviews with 30 former U.S. intelligence and national security officials with knowledge of the U.S. government's efforts against WikiLeaks. Quote, I can't say much about this other than whoever those 30 people who allegedly spoke to one of these Yahoo News reporters, they should all be prosecuted for speaking about classified activity inside the Central Intelligence Agency. Well, I'll tell you why this is interesting. What Mike Pompeo has done here, he's essentially admitted, inadvertently, that this story is true. If it wasn't true, why would he call for these sources to be prosecuted? You want to prosecute intelligence officials for making something up, for something that isn't true? It is true. There were plans, or at least discussions around plans to kidnap or assassinate Julian Assange. This is true. And that's why Mike Pompeo is saying that these people should be prosecuted. I mean, we didn't need Mike Pompeo specifically to come out and confirm it, but it is quite, it is quite remarkable indeed. So we have the UC Global former employees who confirm this, dozens of U.S. officials, and we know, usually that on its own, we know from Russiagate and all sorts of things, when they say unnamed U.S. intelligence officials, you shouldn't take that at face value. But again, we already had testimony in court, I heard it in person, from the UC Global employees. Their statement was submitted and read out. And now Mike Pompeo himself is confirming it. So you have three different sources confirming this publicly. Well, yeah, and so... two publicly went through the investigation, the investigative story, and of course it's true, But what I want to say here, because I think this is a very important distinction to make, is that even though it's true, the CIA, the officials at the highest level of government in the U.S. were discussing kidnapping Assange or killing Assange, even though this is true, you have to understand that what Assange is going through right now is the same thing. There still is a plan to kill Assange. There still is a plan in action to, torture him psychologically, physically. And that's what the process is about, right? When we talk about the process being the punishment, that's what it is. Being persecuted for a decade, arbitrary detention, 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, can't go out, can't see a doctor, can't travel, can't move, no sunlight, can't go outside. 2 years now on remand in Belmarsh prison. You don't think that kills someone? I mean, we heard the medical testimony in the court. We heard all these doctors one by one, neuropsychiatrists. There was also another doctor, so not just psychologists, psychiatrists, but also physicians who talked about how Assange's health deteriorated. He couldn't even go see a dentist because of his tooth. The risk of infection, many things that would naturally occur to anyone being cooped up in such a small space, confined to such a small area for so long. And of course, we know about the conditions in Belmarsh. right? That are driving someone to near suicide, and being denied winter clothes, all these things, right? We could stay here all night going through this list. My point is that this plan is still in place to kill him, and if they're successful with the extradition, he will off himself, right? We know that this is a real risk, and that's why the judge blocked the extradition, because it is a real risk. And so it's very naive to say that, this was just hypothetical. No, they're still killing him effectively every day. They're killing him bit by bit. So you must understand this. You must grasp this. And I think this is a very important thing to note, because otherwise, you're giving them a pass. You're giving them a pass to say, oh, that was just hypothetical. You can't prove that. Yeah, but we can prove this. We know that this is real. Both of them are true, but we can see ostensibly, we can see very clearly that Assange is not well, right? He shouldn't be in a jail, never mind a maximum security jail, and they're killing him slowly. This is a fact. This is a fact.